should tell me. Okay, so we are live. I'm gonna hide this. Okay. Hey guys, I am so excited to introduce my friend Ari. She has been doing foster care with dogs for, I guess, I don't even know how long, but for quite some time. And she has some really great information on bringing dogs into her own home, but she also has great pointers and tips for when she has traveled with her dogs. We're going to talk introducing dogs in the home. We're going to be talking about preparing for that. I'm really, really excited for her to chat with me tonight. So Ari, if you want to introduce yourself and kind of go over your background and everything, that would be great. If you have questions, go and post them in the comments and I will share them with Ari. So
yeah. So my name's Ari. I started, I guess, on the journey with dogs. I adopted my dogs they get excited when I talk to the screen. I started with my first dog that I adopted 3 years ago. His name is Blue, and he had a lot of needs, a lot of reactivity. And so it was really important to me to kind of make sure that I knew what I was doing for him and for myself.
Hold on, I lost you in my ear. Hold on.
No worries. My dogs keep barking. Potato, no.
Okay, there. I hear you again.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you can hear me scolding Potato. So I started with my first dog, Blue. He, when I adopted him, like I said, he'd been returned a few times to the shelter. And so that really started me deciding that I needed to be equipped for all of the needs of this very needy dog. And so about a year after I adopted Blue, I adopted my second dog. His name is Cheese. And they both had, I think, similar issues in certain areas with resource guarding, other things. And so we really had to implement a lot of structure and continue my self-learning and doing training and making sure that my home was good for them to adjust to each other and that this is both of their homes as well. And then about a year and a half ago, I started fostering dogs. And so since I've adopted both of my dogs, I've been trying to make sure socializing them in a safe environment. And so I would have dogs come over to my house. Sorry, the little dogs get mad at each other. Hold on.
She has some new pups, 2 new little ones.
Yeah, I adopted 2 elderly dogs and
she's so brave. She has, I don't know how many dogs she has in her house now, but she's got a lot. So
yeah, currently we're at 6. So so I have 2 fosters right now. I have my 2 original dogs, Blue and Cheese, and then I recently adopted 2 senior Chihuahua mixes. And so they're in their crate, and sometimes when one of them's the boss for sure. So he gave his brother a little bit of a nip. So about a year and a half ago, I started fostering to kind of continue the socialization and engagement with my dogs and other dogs. And also my philosophy, as you can tell with 6 dogs here, is the more the better. But so about a year and a half ago, I started fostering, and that came with, constant new introductions. At this point, I've fostered about, I'm pretty sure it's 6 dogs. Currently there's 2. And all of them have been larger northern breeds, either Malamutes or Huskies. And so, they're powerful dogs. So a lot of the stuff that I learned with my dogs kind of helped me with the transition with the foster dogs. And even just to help them kind of learn new skills. A lot of them have never been inside a house, or some of the other things that their adjustment really was big. And so I think a lot of the structure and pieces that I've implemented with my dogs has really helped with my foster dogs. And it's really cool to kind of see their improvement from coming into my house, either fresh or with certain, bad habits. And then they get adopted and, live the best life ever. So that's kind of my, my experience with fostering. And then again, too, just having two very needy dogs that sometimes misbehave.
So awesome. We are going to, Ari's going to join me again in the next little while, and we're going to talk really about like bringing in a new rescue, routine structure, boundaries, kind of how she lays that out. But as we are coming into the holiday season, I've been putting tons of stuff out there, just like preparing our dogs for the holidays. But Ari's going to help us prepare in case maybe you're taking your dog to family's house and they have other dogs, or maybe family's coming or friends are coming and they're bringing their dogs to your home. How do we prepare our dogs and maybe even our family or friends' dogs for those initial greetings and, the stay? How do we start preparing for the new introductions with cousin dogs and friend dogs?
Yeah, I think there's a few activities that I think I took from your course that I took with you, Sarah, that I think are really helpful. I think for me, the priority has been from when I did it wrong with Blue a few times with my family's dogs, that it's really important for me. I think it's the calm mindset, or kind of teaching them to be without feeling like they have to engage with their surroundings, or even feeling fearful that their surroundings will engage with them when they're not willing.
Yeah.
And so I think some of the stuff that I really like, I think, is like having some solid grasp on sit or a stay. Even if it is right next to you, you kind of have to keep your arm on them or hold them with a leash. I think some of the exercises that I know the resources you have on like leash pressure as like a communication method, like the sneak away or the heel exercises, that it's been really helpful for me that my dogs understand that if they're dragging a leash, or if I have them on leash, that any kind of pressure from me means they should look at me, or they should be paying attention to me and not what's going on around them. And I think too that this like sit on the dog, or the exercises you've given me with like teaching a calm sense right next to me, and then also place has been the best thing ever in my mind for my dogs. And so I think some of those exercises that kind of get the dogs to the point of understanding that just because you're somewhere doesn't mean you have to care about the somewhere or the some things around. It helps kind of keep things calm and to the point where they're at, or where we want dogs to be. I would say at a big party, you don't want them making the party, more exciting than it needs to be.
Yeah. And I will post the sit on the dog exercise in the comments, and we'll put it in the guide that Ari is preparing as well, a link to that. And then that place command, you definitely can utilize with a tether as well. So she was saying, teaching them to be in the calm state of mind. Even if you don't have a stay, we can utilize that tether or even that sit on the dog to help bring in that calm state of mind. So I will include that in the comments. So if you want to start working on that with your dogs, everyone out there, it is a game changer when it comes to going to other people's homes, or having other dogs come into your home, because it gives you that control and that of your dog, but it also gets them into that mindset, which is so, so, so important. And feel free to share those links with friends and family. Maybe you're going to their house, have them start doing these activities too, because if both of them can do that, it does make a huge, huge, huge difference. So
I think too, that's one of the things that I think is important too, with like knowing like disposition of the dogs, that in sharing resources and links of like, this is what I'm doing to prepare, whether they do it or not, that's okay. But I think one of the things in preparation too is it's important that if you know the other dog well, that's good, because you know some of the things about them. But making sure that you ask some of the questions of like, hey, this is what I'm doing with my dog because my dog gets too overly excited, and finding out with them like, oh yeah, my dog really loves this specific toy and gets mad if another dog comes up to it. knowing those things ahead of time too is, I think, really important, because if you can prevent triggers from existing, that's great. If you can prevent them from being a trigger or, becoming a factor, that's just as great. And so, yeah, I think that like sharing resources to encourage the discussion between other people and their dog about their dogs, is big.
Yeah. And then temperament is something that you said too. Like some dogs love their social and they're like, hey, yeah, we'll totally say hello to all the dogs. And then there's other dogs who are like, I like the older calm dogs and I don't like the puppies. Like one of my girl, she says, I'll tolerate a puppy until it starts jumping on me. And then, I'm not a big fan of that. So knowing those things, so I definitely can give her a break when the puppies come out, is something that the more knowledge we have before we get into the situation, absolutely the better. So I love that.
Yeah. I think it is also the benefit of telling people that you're working on certain things with your dog is that it sets up the expectation that, whether it's your house or someone else's house, that you have boundaries for your dog and with your dog. And again, whether they do or not, and whether they're the same or not, that doesn't matter as much. But I think it helps where you don't have someone else maybe trying to correct your dog or encourage your dog, and it sets you up better to advocate for your dog in the way that and or want to advocate for your dog. Know that they need it and how you want to make sure they interact with the space.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love it. Okay. So getting our dogs really to have that calm state of mind, being able to get into that, knowing our dog's personalities, our other dog's personalities, and really planning for those triggers or avoiding the triggers. I love it. So let's jump into what we're doing as far as introductions go. If someone is bringing a dog into your home and they're going to be sharing space with you and your dogs for, maybe the day, or maybe they're coming and staying for the week, what are we doing as far as people coming into our home? So I have like preparation and then our introduction options. What will preparation look like for inside of our home?
Yeah. So for me, because both of my bigger dogs, Blue and Cheese, they have a history of resource guarding. So toys and food, because they have experienced scarcity, it's a specific context for me that like I put away all toys, high value or even low value toys, because I think competition with another dog suddenly makes something high value. And so I think the first preparation point of day of or day before, I gather all the toys and I put them where the dogs can't freely access it. Because I think too that helps me later on when maybe dogs need breaks separate from each other. I can give them their toys, and it helps them stay in their separate spaces. So I think it creates an incentive for other helpful things throughout the holiday events. But again, it prevents triggers. And I think too, one of the biggest points for me of when another dog is coming into my home, where one of my dogs, Blue, he's very anxious. He's a sweet, anxious boy, but that often kind of turns into chaos, if not kind of corralled. And so having a specific place in the house that is quiet and comfortable for the dog, that they can take a break. So Blue is terrified of crates based on his history. And so I only ever have used a crate for like leaving the house for long periods of time, worked with him through it, but he gets to go into my bedroom. So the bedroom is his like happy, safe place. It's where he gets to kind of sleep, snuggle with me, and I can close the door. And so kind of creating a space where there's a comfy dog bed or human bed or couch, whatever it is. And then having toys in there available. And so for specifically, my dogs love like lick mats or toys that I can put treats in. And so I try to make sure that I have stuff like pre-filled or frozen. And so I think having a quiet, comfortable space that I can utilize as needed. And then I think too that it my house isn't very large on the inside and the space itself is not very wide. And so I think I always try to make sure, where do I want the dogs to meet? So if it's going to be inside, I make sure that it's nobody else is in the space where the dogs are meeting together. It doesn't have to be in the entryway, but I also try to map out where is going to be the quiet, controlled environment where the dogs get to meet, outside, inside. But thinking through that is important, because you don't want the environment to ratchet up any behaviors or anxieties. And then again, too, I think the 2 points of like day of, trying to go through again, like what are the factors of the disposition of my dog and this other dog that might come into play. One of my current fosters, she's really shy with humans. So dogs for her are a comfort. And so greeting other dogs isn't as big of a deal, but a human attached to that dog on a leash is a little bit anxiety inducing for her. And so I think for her, for me, the factor of intros is it's not the dog, it's the person. So I think knowing any kind of variety of what is it that my dog might need or this other dog might need, that impacts, like I won't approach, or I will ask this other person to not approach this dog, or I think having that, whatever you can know, clear in your head and making sure that you are thinking about it at least before the introductions happen.
So have you found inside introductions to be different than going like on a walk? That's typically, especially if I have two dogs that, we know have an issue together, where we're hoping like they're just going to coexist, where we're not going to have them like at the end of the leashes trying to eat each other all holiday long. I just want the dogs to coexist together. What I typically will tell people is to meet on neutral ground and walk, parallel with each other and really get into that more calm mindset that way. Have you found success? I mean, with my dogs, when we're bringing in board and train and fosters and things like that, my introductions are a little bit different than what I coach people through. But have you found, especially with your more timid dogs, have you found having an inside greeting to be effective, or is it something where you do feel like having some more space does create a better end result?
Yeah, I think for me, I kind of rank them in, like, an inside greeting is my last choice. It is only if it's necessary or the other options aren't viable. Like if it's really icy outside for the holidays, maybe going on a walk in my neighborhood isn't the best option. So like that's my least favorite, because it is, I think you pointed out, the confinement of it, but also that like the confinement plus the new environment for a dog coming in, it's a lot of distractions that I can't control as much. Whereas outside, it's kind of, they're used to new things if they're walking or other stuff, but there's also space to retreat. So it's my last choice. I do think first choice, jumping, I think the walk side by side is absolutely ideal. But because with fosters, I don't always have someone else with me to walk together. My second favorite choice is I usually bring them to my house. My dogs are inside, and I lead the foster first into the backyard. I let them freely sniff, fully fenced backyard. They can't escape. Let them drag a leash, sniff around. They get used to it. Then I kind of rotate. I let my dogs outside. I let the foster sniff inside, unencumbered by other dogs. And then I have my dogs outside one at a time, but having my dog on a leash next to me in the backyard, and the guest dog is moving about freely. I think for me, it's been the least confrontational, where if I have my dog who knows, even at a basic level, that listening to me is what they should be doing, I can kind of handle whatever this other dog does. But the backyard is still very interesting because they got some intro sniffs, and the other dog is going to want to kind of explore. I think having it outside in a fenced yard is just as ideal as a walk, if a walk is like not possible with the weather.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. So, I guess coming to your home and then going to someone else's home, I feel like it could be a very similar process where, hopefully the person you're going to will be willing to, put toys away, and you can bring that place to where, have that safe space where maybe you sleep for your dog to have breaks. Um, and then introductions could go fairly the same. You can go walk parallel, you could do indoor, outdoor, rotating. So once we've got kind of that really good sniffing down, what is your next go-to? Are you just like allowing them to meet face to face, or what's your next process? So we'll kind of, I don't want to rush, but um, I would say maybe in the next 10 minutes, kind of let's break down that process of, okay, so we've either gone on our walk. Now we have, we're going to do introductions. For me, a lot of times, if I know these dogs have already had bad interaction together, we're going to, instead of come in and start doing introductions, I'm going to come in and have a dog tethered on one side of the house and, well, in the same room, one side and one side, or being sat on leash with the owner, and the other dog is being sat on where they can see each other, but they can't make contact with each other at all. So I don't know if that's kind of your process as well, or as you move inside, if it looks different for you. If I have dogs that have no conflict or no background, and we know both dispositions well, a lot of times it's coming in, leashes dragging, and both owners there ready to step in if we need to take those quick breaks and things like that, as we see escalation or anything like that. So if you want to kind of go over your process, and this could be applied to your inside your home or in a guest's home kind of a viewpoint. Let's go through that step by step.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree a lot with kind of what you introed. For me, extreme caution is necessary because my dogs have rough histories in a variety of ways. And also my fosters are coming in from not always knowing their backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so for me, it is the priority first and foremost is that to let the dogs get to a point of meeting face to face or interacting with each other directly. Calm is a priority. And so I think the first thing a dog trainer that I worked with Blue, when I first adopted him told me was that the dogs ignoring each other is actually a better sign, better than immediate play. And so I think that the first step is the examples of when I'm in my backyard or you're in a family member's backyard. Me having my dog on my leash, because controlling what I can control is my dog. If I'm going to someone else's house and they just let their dog freely move around, that's fine. So I think me putting them in a sit next to me, they stay on a leash and I'm holding it loosely. I think one of the big points that I always try to remember is that if I have to tighten the leash at all, I should be moving, because then otherwise it just creates this like further, I'm gonna, kind of posture up to this other dog. And so in preparation for letting them actually meet, I don't ever let my dog get up and move around with the other dog until after there's like okay, let's go be calm, separate, or on other sides of the room with the other dog. And so I think after the first, if they're sitting with me and I let the other dog approach and sniff my dog, that is totally fine, because I can instruct my dog to ignore, I can distract them, and then I can separate. So I think the first few things of, if you're allowing the dog to sniff your dog or your dog, whatever, I don't let any first contact be longer than like 5 or 10 seconds. Let them sniff each other, and then I step in to physically in between the dogs to kind of say, okay, other dog go away, and then my dog stays. When I'm moving inside, I I still like to tether with my fosters. I keep everybody tethered, even my dogs, because both of them don't necessarily have a good grasp of stay yet. And so having them kind of tethered with an activity on opposite sides of the room so they can see each other, they can see people moving around, they can't move. And having them sit and having a toy or an activity that they only get when they're separated. And that's been a big help, because if they're tethered and just staring at each other, right, like that is too tense. And so I think having, whether it's, if you have a super anxious dog, with Blue, I always put him in a separate space. He doesn't even like necessarily seeing another dog to kind of calm down. So utilizing that quiet space wherever you have it, or again, having them sit, lay down, here's a toy, tethered on a place or a bed. And then you go about your business socializing, and I like pay attention to the dog, your dog, kind of watching body language. If they get up, kind of giving them attention wherever you are, but kind of keeping them in that spot for, I mean, for me, I like to ensure that the calm or the like come down of, okay, this new environment is solidified. And so honestly, I'd say like at least 30 minutes of like, just stay here, have this fun toy. And then after that point, I think like releasing the dogs should really be not where the other people are. Also, I think the first kind of, okay, everybody drag leashes, taking them back outside, or maybe the basement if everybody is upstairs, that the extra noise of people or other people maybe trying to come up and touch them, it's an extra stressor I don't want to mess with. So when it's kind of ready, okay, we're all calm. I like to let them just drag their leashes, or I guess lead them outside on leash and then just letting it go. I think that in my experience, especially with Cheese, he's so sweet. Most people say I've never seen Cheese be mean or aggressive, but he is very protective. In his, I think, history, he's had to fight for himself. And so he has a tendency, he can be aggressive. And so any tension on a leash, it makes it worse for him. And so I think I let them drag their leashes around, and I follow my dog as closely as I think is necessary. My eyes on him the whole time, reading his body language. And then once they've maybe sniffed each other, said hello, I make sure again that they part. The first few times that they go up and acknowledge each other, for me, because my dogs, again, it could be a bad situation, I make sure that I cut it off. Like, okay, you guys have sniffed each other's butts twice, move on, go ignore. Because I also, like, not everybody else's dog will just ignore. They might really want to play initially. So I think these are the pieces also of like advocating for your dog, where I'm going to force the ignoring until after enough times of them kind of, once I see that they part without me having to like separate or like stand in between, or if they kind of follow each other around, like, hey, I'm going to show you something, like some of those good signs of not like direct contact play. That's kind of the point where I'm like, okay, it's safe and I'm going to keep an eye, watch, but they can kind of drag their leashes more freely, and I stop following my dogs around necessarily. And I think one thing too is if you're going to a house where there are multiple dogs coming, like a lot of people bring in their dogs, knowing which dog, if it's your dog, if it's someone else's, needs it to be maybe more of a one-on-one intro is also important factor to consider. But like my foster Lacey, who's very shy with humans, she would prefer to walk into a room full of dogs. And so for her, it's not as important as maybe my dog Blue, because he's so anxious. He is uncertain. He really needs to like slow go everything. So I think too, understanding what numbers your dog will and won't be comfortable with is important. And I think once I kind of have like a good thought of, okay, they are cohabitating well, I still insist that my dog, whether or not someone else's dog, but my dogs come in for a rest in the beginning, like every 30 to 40 minutes. I'm like, okay, come inside and you're going to sit by me, or go into this room that's quiet. because I think if their tension builds in a way that I am not observing, it could still happen in, a fraction of a second where they want to correct another dog and correct too hard. So I think
Yeah.
too, being aware of telling your dog it's time for a break if they aren't comfortable quite yet at somebody else's house coming up to you, or maybe they're too excited by everything that
Mhm.
I still force them to take a break and they have to come sit by me, because then they get to like calm down, and then they get to go outside and kind of like re-get excited, and then when it's at a big level they come back in and they relax. And so too, I think
Yeah.
they are in a new environment going through the full cycle, in a way that they can get used to, and then they start self-regulating that way.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. I love it. So, um, I think every situation is going to look different. We have dogs that do have reactivity aggression. Maybe they're shy or timid, and then we have dogs that are like over the top, um, overexcited dogs. You can see dogs mesh well together and go about the holidays very, very, very quickly. But I love always starting in that nice calm state of mind. And I know you had mentioned that like if you go to someone's house and their dog is free and loose, um, for me, if my dog is on sit on the dog, I don't let the other dog approach, just
Mm.
because when they are like tethered or something like that, sometimes that can cause a aggression reaction, especially for our more timid dogs. And so I feel like that is something that if you're going into someone's home, just let them be aware that, like, hey, if we're doing this activity, especially if we know these dogs have had conflict before, they shouldn't make any contact with each other quite some time, and they may just not ever get to make that contact. We just want coexistence. But that for someone that is at the beginning of their training journey and things like that, I would just caution if your dog is on a leash with you, having another dog approach can cause issues, just so that people are aware. Um, with some dogs, I knock it off and they're completely good to go. And I think that's with your dogs, absolutely. But for people at that beginning of the training journey, especially if we have more intense dogs running up and like jumping on them and things like that. Um,
Yeah.
one thing also, I do think people should understand that like there are some dogs that will get along and there's some dogs that won't get along. It's just like people. Um, so there may be people that can coexist at the holidays, and you just keep your opinions to yourself and you can make it through the holidays and everything is civil. There may be situations where, that's what your holiday looks like. We're just going to be civil. These dogs have to learn to just be civil together. And then there's some dogs that are, extroverted and love everybody and they can get along. So your holidays may look very different than someone else's, but the way that we set them up at the very beginning, like Ari was explaining, like making sure that we do have the calmness with both dogs before we do actually do some of those face-to-face greetings is so, so, so important. The other thing I really loved, because when I go out and take the two dogs on walks and we start doing a little bit of greetings, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's go. So I love that that is what you're doing as well. If you're dragging leashes, I would even almost put longer lines on, because I really like if they're kind of doing their thing and you see one maybe starting to get a little postury and they're like going towards the other, I can just step on the leash and say, leave it. And I can stop that forward motion because I have a long length. So, 15 feet drag lines for both dogs isn't a bad option as what versus like a 6 foot leash, just to be able to stop forward motion before they can even make contact with each other, because then we can stop a lot of that just like escalation very quickly.
Yeah.
And then last thing that I love, 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 love that you said is that you force breaks. That is something that I find so important, even with my dogs and with family that they know well. Like during Christmas, when we come over and we've got all the cousins and all the commotion, we may not have other dogs here, but going and having them go take a nap in their kennel or in another room isn't a bad thing. With my fosters, they can have more freedom and they're dragging that line around, but I see them start amping up and we go sit on the tether. It is helping them, like you said, learn to self-regulate. And then they get to the point where you don't have to self-regulate, you don't have to regulate for them. And that is the beauty of taking those breaks, because we do see, I see a lot more issues happen when, even if we've got a dog that is so friendly, they got to still take a break because they get tired and
I like to,
and they can get over the top. So yeah.
I like to think of it too, where it's like, if I am very tired, I'm grumpy or stressed already in a day, I love to take a 30-minute nap. And then I'm like, whoo, I can be nice, I can be kind, I can be patient. But if I don't take that 30-minute nap, I'm going to snap at someone that asks me a question for the second time that day, right? Or like something small, I'm going to have a shorter fuse. I think it's the exact same with my dogs, where it's like, if they can't choose to take that 30-minute nap and I don't choose it for them, they're going to start snapping. And another dog can perceive it as a threat, rightfully so. And that's not a situation I ever want to be in. And I think to my sister's dog, my sister has a dog who, he's an old man, but also he's like an only dog child. My sister they have one kid, but he has been like the baby for so long. And him and my dog Blue don't necessarily get along. Blue is at this point now scared of Braun. And so I think too that it is now, for the last 3 years, they are able to coexist. And Blue knows that he just needs to, he knows retreat, right? Like if Braun is making him uncomfortable, if Braun comes into his space, he retreats. And Braun knows the same thing. And so I think when I introduced Cheese to my sister's dog, because Cheese is bigger, stronger, knowing potentially that like they might never love each other or want to play, we kept them on like leashes or like next to us for like 8 months. And so I think too that in the beginning, it feels like a little bit like, oh, my dog, they should want to play. They should be able to have fun and freedom. And I felt really bad in the beginning with Blue, like restricting his movements at my parents' house, because I was like, oh, the other dogs get to have fun. But they already knew each other. My dog didn't know them very well. And it actually was really comforting, I think, to him that he could sit by me and I could soothe him in addition to helping him learn how to self-soothe. And the that groundwork, it makes it so much easier now to where I can show up to my parents' house and the dogs can be off leash immediately, because all the dogs that are there know each other. We've established appropriate boundaries, and like my dogs kind of know the routine of they need to take a break, they need to ignore. And so I think it feels like you're doing something mean maybe, but it's not at all. It really has set up my dogs to not be rude to someone else's dog, because that's what I want. I don't want them to be mean.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate it. You have so much knowledge, and she's got this great guide that she's putting together. So I will post that in the comments as well. If you have questions, feel free to post them in the comments. If you're catching this on the replay, and we will definitely get to those as they come in. But Ari, thank you so much for your expertise and knowledge. And I learned a lot from you as well tonight. My experience is much different than your experience. I know you tend to take on more of the tougher dogs, and I really admire that. And I'm at the place in my life where I have to be more careful about the dogs that come into my home with family at this age and stage of life. But getting some of those like little glimpses of how you approach different situations is awesome for even me to learn and grow from. So thank you.
No, thank you. And I'll just put in a plug that I had done 2 years of training and stuff with my dog Blue, and I took one of your classes with my dog Cheese, and was the best thing I've ever done. So I also highly recommend any and all content that you provide and give. And it was the best money I spent doing your course with Cheese, because it's the off leash obedience with him is night and day. So putting that plug in there too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You worked hard. Everyone that comes through, they say thank you. And I go, you did the hard work. I just sit there and I just teach you. So you guys do the hard work. You're the ones that are amazing. So,
Okay.
hey, well, I will end now, but thank you so much. I'm gonna